Hi, I'm Darren McWaters. I had a hand in writing Xenoviv. What you're about to see are some deleted scenes. Now, the interesting thing about these scenes is that they were never actually filmed. We didn't have the money or the time to actually film them. So what you're going to see are the storyboards that are based on the original script, and you'll get a little bit of narration sort of explaining what you're seeing as well. So we hope you enjoy it. Here are the deleted scenes. All right, now we're going to look at scene 44. Now this is a scene that would have come immediately following the scene where Rich Baker's character Elliot is stabbed. It's actually a little awkward in the film because you see the general kind of looking down at his body, and then it just goes right into the next scene. This will sort of explain why that feels a little strange. In the original script, and as you'll see in scene number 44A, what happens is that when Rich Baker's character Elliot falls to the ground, it becomes clear that he's wearing a mask of some sort, and you can see here that there's a mask and what looks like a flying book. I don't really know how that was going to be incorporated, but at some point I think there was going to be a flying book there too. And so then the general realizes he's wearing a mask. In 44B, you'll see that the general then leans over and removes the mask of the Elliot character, who's now obviously stabbed and deceased. He removes the mask, revealing that Elliot the entire time was actually a trained ape, which would not only send the council members into a panic and would confuse the general. He'd be like, "What's this, a trained ape? And a mask? I've never heard of such a thing in the caverns," or something like that. And anyway, so he realizes that it's an ape and not actually a man from the homeworld. In 44C, you'll see what is essentially a picture of the mastermind behind this entire plan. As it comes out, there's a man named Dr. Zoomer, who is the evil mastermind behind sending in a trained ape to trick the people and to try and divide the colony. Well, in 44D, you see then that the general grabs the mask, and he also takes some of the trained ape's valuables, watches, earrings, that sort of thing, maybe small change, and he swears revenge on Dr. Zoomer, something like, "If I ever see that Dr. Zoomer who sent this dirty ape here, I will smash him to bits." And but you know, that kind of language we don't really even use in the actual film, so that's why 44 was cut. And also the expense of trying to find a trained ape would have been hard. Okay, this is scene 48. 48 is a scene that happens actually on the surface with the Rangers. We on the crew casually referred to this scene as the Rangers on the surface have a freestyle BMX trick-off. Now, what essentially happens, you'll see in 48A, is that the Rangers find basically a space cave full of tricked-out BMX bicycles. We wouldn't have called them bicycles, obviously, because in the future we probably would have called it like space wheels or pedal cars or, light rods or something. In any case, they would essentially have been tricked-out BMX bikes. We actually had those, but ended up, cutting this at the last minute. They decide to have a trick-off with bikes that they find, and as you'll see in 48B, there's a lot of different things that they do in sort of a freestyle competition, the prize for which is to determine who will marry Princess Gelda from planet Mercury. Now, a lot of people got confused here and thought she was from Mercury, which would obviously be too hot to sustain life. She's not from Mercury in our solar system. This is another solar system altogether. It's called Mercury with an N, like Chuck Norris. So they have this trick-off to see who will win Princess Gelda's hand in marriage. Now we'll move on to 48C, and as you can see, the character, which was called Ranger 3, who was Kyle White's character originally, she falls in love with Kyle White, and you can understand why that would happen. But as she's judging the space competition, it turned out, look at 48D, you can see that the Joey character actually wins. The part played by Joey Williams, I think it was Ranger 2, wins the trick-off, the BMX trick-off. I think he does a bunny hop and maybe an endo. I'm not exactly sure how we would have played that out, but as he wins the trick-off, something terrible happens in that Princess Gelda is attacked by mercs suddenly and transformed into sort of a heaping mass of protoplasm. And then sadly, it's kind of a tragic scene, Kyle's character, Ranger 3, gathers the protoplasm and keeps it in a container on his mantle. And just to remember her, you can see the G there, which is a reminder of not of good times. You might look at the G and think he's thinking good times, but that's not why that G's there. It's to remind him of Princess Gelda, who is now just a mess. All right, now we're going to take a look at scene 105. This is a scene between Heather, played by Michael Strawbridge, and the General, who actually I had the opportunity to play in the film. In this scene, after Heather's heart-to-heart with the General, you'll remember that they had that sort of tender moment where the General very naturally hugs his daughter and makes her feel better about her problems. Heather ends up sitting down with a family photo album and a bag of Hydro Fries. We went with Hydro Fries because it was kind of futuristic sounding and at the same time recognizable to teenagers, which we thought was important, and sort of has a French reference too. We're trying to build some bridges there. 105B, you'll see that what Heather realizes as she looks at the family photo album is that she has no mom. And some of you who've seen the film already may have recognized this same thing. The General doesn't have a wife, and Heather doesn't have a mom. There's nobody playing that role because she doesn't exist. And Heather's shocked by this fact. As you can see on her face, she's like, there's no mom. I don't know how Michael would have played it, but that's the way I sort of envisioned it when I wrote it. In 105C, Heather confronts the General in a heated argument in front of the council. The General is conducting business, and she storms in and she's like, Dad, I was looking at a photo album and eating some Hydro Fries, and I realized I have no mom. What gives? And maybe she would cry or put her hand on her hip, something dramatic. And the scene is resolved, though, I think very satisfactorily in 105D. You'll see the diagram there where the General kind of breaks down as she sort of confronted him with this, and he admits to her that, the General admits to Heather that her mom is mute and invisible, that she's been with him the whole time, but they are unable to hear her or know where she is because she's mute and invisible, of course. And he cries, and they hug, and it would have been a tender moment, but the invisibility thing was just something we had a hard time overcoming technically. So, all right. Okay, now we're going to look at scene number 215. This is a scene that we had sort of loosely titled on the crew, "The Colonists and the Mercs Have Their First Thanksgiving Dinner." It wasn't actually Thanksgiving, but you get the gist. In this, as you'll see in 215A, in an effort to make peace with the Mercs, the colonists send out invitations to a special dinner, and this is kind of cartoony. The Mercs don't actually look like this. I think their eyes are red, and these kind of look like dark ghosts or something, but the Mercs are actually quite scary. But this is just a storyboard, of course. So they get these invitations. In 215B, you see that the colonists prepare a feast, as well as some dinner entertainment. You can't see it depicted. Maybe over there in the corner you get kind of a sense, but the way we were going to shoot this was that not only would they prepare a huge meal to share with the Mercs, but they would also do some things like karaoke or mime, maybe some puppet theater, a little space Pictionary, or whatever they do in the future. But unfortunately, as you'll see in 215C, which you're seeing now, the Mercs do not show up for the dinner or the entertainment, for that matter, because Mercs, as it turns out, are unable to read the invitations, and we would have shown the Mercs maybe stomping around and going, and they would have been, frustrated, obviously, maybe more of a grunting, as they try to read the invitations. Maybe one of them would try to eat an invitation or throw it into the wall in a sort of a fit of rage. But the Mercs don't show up. So in 215D, at the close of that scene, what ends up happening is that the colonists, who've already got the food and the entertainment prepared, end up dressing up like Mercs. And ultimately, the colonists feel like that the dinner is a huge success as far as building a bridge between the two people groups. And ultimately, this scene was cut, not because it wasn't moving or because it wasn't necessary to the film, but more because I think at the end we all just felt like this particular scene was just, too silly. So I think the idea of a Thanksgiving dinner was a little far-fetched. So, okay. All right, now scene 42 was initially going to be our ending scene. We ended up not using this because of, you'll see some expense and also some technology that we didn't have access to. 42A begins basically at the conclusion of the show with the General shutting and locking an elaborate series of gates. And while it initially seems like he's locking himself in, what he's actually doing is locking the people on the surface. And you can see here from the drawing that they're shocked and surprised. You can almost hear them saying, "Oh, What's the general doing? Why is he staying down below? But they don't know. They don't see what's coming yet. 42B, as we move on, in the next scene, some ships from the homeworld arrive, and they drop off basically some killer robots. These are giant killer robots that begin to kill the people. They're saying things like, "We are giant robots, and we want you not to be alive anymore." Something, it would probably have been a little more clever than that. Moving on to scene 42C. You'll see the diagram there. Then as the people on the surface are destroyed and obliterated by the killer robots, the robots are like, "We are sad, there's no one else to destroy." Then the general emerges from the cave and begins to collect their valuables. Turns out he has a bit of a kleptomaniac problem, something like that. And he gathers all their valuables into and heaps them into a huge pile. Moving on to 42D, then we would see at the conclusion of the film the general sitting atop this huge pile of watches and shoelaces, futuristic shoelaces, but maybe sunglasses or Palm Pilot type things. And as he sits atop this pile of treasure, then he would declare a line that was, something like, "I'm the king of the world. Somebody bring me a pecan pie." And that's the way the film would have ended if we just decided to do it the way it was originally in the script. So.